how has Minneapolis changed from the time you were growing up to what we're seeing now?
You know, Paul, I got to tell you, man, um, it's, it was bad in the 60s. Um, just from the standpoint of a Black perspective.
Yeah.
Um, but it was better then than it is now, if you can believe that. Because I think everybody was on the page of fighting for civil rights and fighting for upward mobility and fighting for equality and fighting for, fighting for the right to experience the same, American dream, the same opportunities as everybody else. Granted, obviously that, the cultural control had a 400-year head start,
Yeah.
and so, from that standpoint, we were trying to, assimilate, catch up, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So, but Minneapolis changing, I think, it used to be full of opportunities, but if you think about that time period, it was such a transformational time period because, you had integration in schools, and so with that integration and the passing of civil rights and having to integrate schools and all that, what you had was, a systematic change was going as those things passed, and those positive things that you saw on the surface passed. There was other things going on underneath. So you'd see, okay, yeah, now Black people get to vote, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We get to participate in the systems that control, our lives and our world and the communities around us, if we understand that and if we participate. But behind the scenes, they were taking away funding for the schools that Black people were living in, because they took all the white folks, bust them out of those schools and out of those communities. And once they bust them out, they systematically started taking the money, the funding from those schools and started shutting down those community centers. Like, all the things that, Prince and myself and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Morris, all those things that we were able to take advantage of and create music and create bands and do all that kind of stuff. It's because there were music programs. Right. That's because there were community centers. That's because there was the Way and there was the Boys Club and the YWCA and the YMCA and all of that. Well, once they, things changed, they started, once, it was no longer integrated, and the money that was there, they just took it out. And then he took the community centers out. And in terms of the Way, which was one of the main community centers that gave us a lot of opportunity, not only did they take that out, tear it down, but they built a police station in its place. And and that police station became, where it was replaced the community center, which completely changed that dynamic.
Yeah.
Which turned that community, that vibrant community, which is the community that we came from, they turned that vibrant community into basically a police community. Because now, the police were there, and they, all of a sudden, before then, the biggest thing you had to worry about was maybe, this brother over here who sold a little bit of weed.
Right.
All of a sudden, once the police moved in, now there was like cocaine, there was like crack, there was like all these, there was guns everywhere. That didn't exist before that police station got put there. So, I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but all I know is that dynamic changed. And then, where the McDonald's used to be, where everybody used to hang out, across the street from there, they built a funeral home. and so that vibrant community went from police and funeral, or from community center and bands and festivals to police and funeral. So that was gone. Music programs gone. The art programs in the schools, got, shrank, and the funding that went to those programs now is going to the police departments. And, so they get to have the tanks and and the same kind of weaponry that they have, in Desert Storm and wherever else. So, I mean, it's just sad. And I think at this point, what needs to happen, because if you really scrape away, the reality,
Yep.
And you talk about what Black folks are actually doing. And I think Doc Rivers said it the other day perfectly. Black people are now the hunted, and they're hunted by police. And people are basically, the hunters are crying fear, when Black people are the ones being hunted. It's not like Black people are going into communities and shooting white folks and, doing anything. The thing about Black people that people don't seem to understand is if you leave them alone and give them an opportunity, give them a sense of pride, give them equal opportunity, a job, and the pride to be able to feed their family, they ain't got no beef.
Right.
And if you go back again, like I was talking about the 60s, you go back then, because that's all they wanted. But what happened is they made it so that, programs that you could move into a Black community, you could move in and you could get, $300, $400 apartment or duplex.
Yep.
But you couldn't be married. You had to have kids, but you couldn't be married, which means you can't have a husband. Yeah, no, this is how they created the Black community, and so you had to be a single woman, and they would give women jobs, but they wouldn't give men jobs. So it was like, and this was a program that was designed specifically to break up the Black family unit, to break up that, and it was successful. And so now, fast forward, and people say, well, how come, all these, there's no men in the home? This is by design, and this is not a conspiracy theory. It is what happened. And so now we're having to, deal with the repercussions of that reality.